Well, hey, everybody, Mike Griffith here. Welcome to the Ingles on the Beat show. Appreciate you joining me tonight, and very pleased to be joined by Eli Wolf, a former Tennessee and Georgia tight end. And boy, sometimes true stranger than fiction. With the new transfer rule, I still remember back a year and a half ago when Nick Saban was telling us what was going to happen, what the result of this would be. And some coaches were against it. Kirby Smart was for it. Kirby was saying, hey, coaches can change schools. We understand that sometimes, kids need to change schools for whatever reason. And then there was always the graduate transfer rule that was in effect. So when Georgia went into the offseason, there were certain positions of need. And receiver was one of them, and tight end was the other. Obviously, McCole Hardman went pro early. Riley Ridley went pro early, and Isaac Nauta went pro early. So we saw them get Lawrence Cager from Miami and Eli Wolf from Tennessee. And everybody said to me, they said, Mike, what are they going to get with Eli Wolf from Tennessee? You covered Tennessee. And I said, here's the thing about Eli. His big brother, Ethan, every time he would talk to Ethan would always turn the interview into, my brother is better than me. My brother is better than me. And we'd go, okay, well, that's great. Let's see. Let's find out. And Eli, sure enough, came to media days with Tennessee and sure looked like he was going to be in for a big season. And the next thing you know, we see him at Georgia, and he's making big catches and helping beat the Gators. But I want to kind of back up. Before we get to that part of Eli's career, there was a lot that happened that I think a lot of people could benefit from hearing from. And I guess for you, Eli, it started when you were a walk-on at Tennessee, actually a high school receiver. So take us from that small Minster, Ohio high school, and how do you go from being a high school receiver to a walk-on at an SEC school down in SEC country?
Yeah. First off, Mike, thanks for having me. But yeah, that first year kind of at Tennessee, walking on, it was eye-opening. Small town kid, 205-pound wide receiver walking in, blocking Derek Barnett on scout team first year. It was thrown into the flames. So, but it was a fun year. Made a lot of really good friendships there at Tennessee, and it just worked my butt off trying to, every day, just one time a day, get noticed a little bit, because anybody knows if you're a walk-on, it's sometimes hard to get that, acknowledgement from the coaching staff. So I just, set out that every day I wanted to do one good thing to get noticed and just never be a problem guy. That approach kind of, earned the respect of some of my teammates. Just, see me come in and work hard every day. And, a lot of those walk-ons did. We worked hard, every day. Then as the players started to notice, the coaching staff started to notice, and I think it was 2 years in or year and a half in, Coach Jones and his staff gave me the opportunity to be on scholarship, and that was a humbling moment, an awesome moment for me in history and for my family, and just it felt like all that hard work kind of amounted to that moment, and then it was just it all came to fruition. But I didn't let that change my mindset. I was as hungry as ever. The end goal was not to get a scholarship. The end goal was to be the best player that Eli Wolf can be. So,
yeah, and I remember how he gave it to you. He actually called you and Ethan out, and you were going to do like a one-on-one hitting drill. And now you didn't look phased. Growing up with a brother that big, and I get Ethan's still kicking around the NFL, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where he's going to land, but I've seen he's been in and out of camps. He's a guy with a huge prototype size, big player, had some big-time touchdowns against against Florida for Tennessee. But what was it like having Ethan Wolf in the house? I mean, he's a big dude. I mean, were you guys always going head-to-head? Were you always the runt that had to be tough because Ethan was such a big, strong guy?
For sure. Ethan's always been the big brother physically and, just right there a year and a half older than me. So, I've always felt the need that I had something to prove with Ethan. I'm always been smaller, always been younger. So I wanted to show as I came through, I can do everything he did, but a little bit better. So, he came through and he set this, standard in high school, had all these, big offers. And I was like, well, hey, like that, I want to do that. I look up to him a lot, and he taught me a lot of things. So, I guess, when you're always battling with a brother as talented as Ethan, going into an SEC program and battling for spots, you're 18 years in already. So I feel like he did help me a lot, and teach me how to work hard and earn things for myself.
Yeah, Ethan, he impressed me too. I watched Ethan go through adversity at Tennessee. You were a part of that. And you always wonder, how will people handle adversity? Everybody can handle success. When you win a football game, the post-game interviews are easy. There's all the players want to talk. They all come out for interviews. But Ethan was a guy that would show up even when the things got tough. That was when his leadership emerged, and I really started to understand what he was about as a player and as a person. And Ethan's ability to handle adversity, Eli, is what gave me the confidence to write so much about you before you even came on the Georgia campus, because I thought, I know what these Wolf boys are made of. I've seen it firsthand. I watched Tennessee go from being this record-setting 2016 offense to this unbelievable heartbreak in the swamp in 2017, and watched Ethan just tower above the situation. And then I watched you kind of have to absorb, some of the difficult challenges that you had. You mentioned going from walk-on to scholarship player. I believe there was one year where you'd almost gotten yourself, you were in the rotation, and didn't you have like a pretty serious injury that took you out for the season one year at Tennessee?
Yes, sir. I think my redshirt sophomore year was that year that me and Ethan were kind of, hey, this is the year we're going to play a lot together.
Yeah.
And that's how it was. That first game, it was a lot of me and Ethan, 12 personnel. And then I believe it was the second game, just kind of ran a cell route, caught it, and the defender came down my ankle into the high ankle sprain. And it kept me out from 3 to 4 weeks. And after that, it was hard to get back into the rotation of things a little bit. Eventually healed up and was totally fine. But that year was Ethan's last year. So it kind of, while he was on the way out, that year that we had hoped for so long of me and him playing on the field together, kind of got shortened a little bit. And it was unfortunate, but we enjoyed being on the same team. We still practice, hard every week. We're in the meeting rooms every week, and anybody that's played college football can understand how special that would be to be able to do it with someone in your family. So.
Yeah, you've kind of run the gamut of college football player experiences, right? You went from walk-on to scholarship. You went from being a top 10 Tennessee team in 2016 to the heartbreak of 2017. I guess I'll back up and let me ask you about Coach Jones. Butch Jones is a guy that, what I see on social media doesn't really seem to match what I get from players when I talk to guys like you and Derek Barnett and Josh Dobbs. You had an experience with Butch. What kind of head coach was he, and how much fire was behind the smoke? Because in the end, there was just a lot of people that were critical on it. To me, it just looked like a team that had a lot of injuries and tough losses.
Yeah, and what I'll say is maybe he's a little misunderstood. I had a different relationship with Coach Jones as many players on the team did. They were recruited out of high school, kind of built that relationship early. As a walk-on naturally anywhere, and you're just not going to have that good of a relationship with the head coach because it's just different. I mean, and that's everywhere. It's not just Tennessee. So up until towards the scholarship era, my relationship was just, hey, this is the head coach, and he's doing what we can to win as many football games as we can. So when he handed me that slip of paper, the whole coaching staff congratulated me. I was like, this guy, he didn't have to take a chance on me, but he did. So. That's something I'll always fight for Coach Jones, and he did so much for me and my family that I would say misunderstood is sometimes the perception I think that gets made of him through social media and how it is nowadays.
Yeah, I agree. I think he'll be a head coach again soon, Eli. Honestly, I mean, he's coached a couple years with Nick Saban as one of those analyst positions, and you know how important those guys are from your Tennessee and Georgia experience. So the head coaching. The change occurs and Jeremy Pruitt comes in. And first of all, when a change like that happens, does everybody kind of look and go, wait a minute, this guy didn't recruit me. What's going to happen to my job? I mean, what is the mindset on the team when there is a coaching change like that?
There's definitely a little bit of uncertainty. But when a new coach is coming in, they're hungry and they're going to do what it takes to win. So my mindset, I can't speak for everybody. My mindset was, hey, I know what I showed the last coaching staff, but it's time to reprove myself to this one. So it's a challenge. It's one that you gotta, look at in the eyes and just say, hey, I'm gonna. This is still my team. These are still my teammates, and I'm gonna do whatever it takes to win this, as many games as possible, regardless of who's calling the plays. It's still a football team. You still got to win, games. So
there's an orange and white game And I think you were the leading receiver. Am I right? Didn't you have like 5 or 6 catches? Is that right?
It might have been. I'm not sure about leading receiver, but I remember having one spring game there where you might be right. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So and then lo and behold, you show up in Birmingham and you're the representative. You're one of the representatives for Tennessee, and I'm going, well, here it is. I knew it. The Wolf boys, no time at all. Jeremy Pruitt's impressed with Eli. He's bringing them to Birmingham to represent the Tennessee Vols. And you got to be riding a high then. So let me ask you about that experience, because not everybody gets to go to Birmingham for SEC Media Days. What is that like when you're going down there and there will be hundreds of media, everybody waiting for that gotcha moment? How do you handle the interviews, and what's the mindset going down there on the plane with the other guys and the head coach?
For sure. It was a huge honor. The second they told me, hey, you're one of 3 guys that's going to represent this, football team at SEC Media Days, that was a huge honor. So I was incredibly humbled by it. And then hopping on, getting on a whole new suit, hopping on a plane and jet and driving or flying over there, police escort. I'm thinking, what is this small town kid from Minster, Ohio, in this situation? So it was an awesome, unbelievable experience. Just, people ask me questions and I'm like, wow, just thinking back 2 years ago, I was just trying to even play a snap. And here we are, and everybody's saying, what is the expectation of the Tennessee Volunteers? So for that to kind of be like directed to me, it was just a surreal moment. And even after it was over, I was like, I can't believe that. And I talked to Ethan, I always give him crap. I was like, hey, how come you were never, and we bust each other's chops on it. But in all seriousness, it was just a great honor to be able to represent the entire football organization like that.
Yeah, a long way from being a 205-pound walk-on tight end at an SEC school. But here we go. It wouldn't be a Wolf story without a little drama. So they recruit the number 1 junior college tight end in the country. He comes in, and I don't know Jeremy Pruitt's offense real well, but one thing I do know is that Jeremy put a big priority on having big linemen. And to be fair, he needed a lot of size because that offense was built for Butch Jones spread. So the linemen were a little bit smaller, faster, lighter. So Jeremy's coming in. He's trying to get heavier guys. So I know Kirby talks about how Georgia keeps up with the weight. I'm guessing that Tennessee kept up with weight too. And how did you deal with that? Because now all of a sudden you go from one coaching staff wanting you to do one thing and be one way. And now all of a sudden it seemed like the expectations and maybe the demands were different. How do you handle that?
Yeah, the expectation, it did change, and the offensive scheme changed. And that's something kind of I alluded to earlier. It's, you're still a football team and you're still going to sacrifice and do whatever it takes to win games. So if it meant me putting on 15 more pounds, I was going to do everything I could to get there to help the team. So it was a challenge for me. It was a personal challenge for me that was, set upon me early. Hey, you're light. Let's bring some weight on. And I was like, okay, let's do it. And even a little undersized, I was still said, hey, don't let the size, minimize what I'm allowed to do in this offense. I'll do everything I can. I can hang in there with the big guys. And so I took it upon myself to just do everything possible, to be, a leader of the team and to perform the best I could on Saturdays to give us the best chance to win.
Yeah. Michael, I don't know if my producer's watching. Michael, if you've got the workout video of Eli, I want to show people, just how slight and little he is, and all joking, his workout was very impressive for the combine. If we've got that footage of Eli's workout, can we roll that? Like people to see his workout in Knoxville at the D1 facility. A facility I believe started by I want to say Will Bartholomew, a former Tennessee Vol, owns these D1 facilities. So let's go ahead and take a look at this footage. Eli, tell me, how did you set this workout up, and what was the genesis of doing your own workout like this?
Yeah, so I've been training in the offseason at D1 in Knoxville with Devin Driscoll. He's been my trainer through it all. I've also had Corey Wendell and also Jake Morgenstern. They've been training me, and basically it came down to the time around the 18th.
Hey, that we get that right.
Go down to Georgia after Saturday. We were a little unsure if we were going to have it. It was Friday approach, and that next Wednesday. So I drove down there. They came and 35. The news broke that, hey, there's going to be no pro day. 35. This is a little bit worse than everybody thought. So Devin actually proposed the idea. He said, hey, well, a lot of guys are going to be in the shoes that you're in, and it stinks that you trained, months on end for this not to happen. So let's see if we can put one together ourselves. And that's what we did. So the guys that I was training with, we made a pro day, brought some video guys in, had them film the whole thing, and just try to make it as legitimate as possible to send out to these scouts and GMs, just so they know, hey, here it is. If you want it, if you don't want a video, if you wanted real eyes on it, well, at least we, did something, gave it our best shot. So I thought it was a great idea by Devin to do it. It gave us an opportunity to get our numbers out there, get a workout out there, just something for them to watch. And if they do, take credit for it and say, hey, yeah, this is good, then we did something right. So I'm glad we did it. It was fun, even if some GMs say, nah, I'd rather see it in person. It was still a good time.
120.
And I know people say it's not football, you can turn the film on, but of the combine drills and combine exercises, which ones do you think are the most important to apply to your position, and which one are you the most proud of you made the most progress on in your training?
I would say 40 is important. Breaking up the seam speed. That one, and then I think the shuttle is pretty important too. Lateral movement. A lot of the workouts there's probably a purpose for them, but some of them like it's one of those you'll train for it and you'll never train for it again. But I think the 40 is important for seeing that speed down the seam, and also just lateral movement. It just kind of shows agility, getting in and out of breaks, and so those were two that I was proud of that I worked really hard at, and then from day one to the mock pro day that we did,
245.0.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how many times did you put that up on the bench, Eli? That looked like you were kicking that one pretty good.
I think it was 23, which that was just one over the best I did in training. So a little bit of juice flown for the video. But yeah, that was one we trained pretty hard for, because that was kind of a question mark. Is size a problem? Is strength a problem? And I wanted to make sure, hey, strength is certainly not a problem with me, and I worked just as hard, if not harder, than everybody in the weight room. So to compensate for the size difference.
Yeah. So now let's move forward from Tennessee. I've shown everybody what kind of prospect you turned into, but Georgia. I mean, how did Georgia really know what they were getting? I remember talking. I think I got hooked up with your dad somehow and said, hey, you're Eli's dad. I heard he might be transferring, graduate transfer. I'd heard Ohio State in the mix. He had asked me about Georgia, how much do they use their tight ends? I mean, everybody wants to know that. I said, well, Isaac Nott had 30 catches or whatever. They got Charlie Warner back, but, I knew Georgia was going to be a championship contender, and I knew you'd like it down here. What was the process like for you as you're trying to figure out? I mean, you got 1 year. You got 1 year to make it count, Eli. How do you put all those marbles in the Georgia jar over maybe some other places?
Yeah, just a couple calls with the coaches. And I told him, Coach Smart, straight up, right when we talked for the first time, hey, I don't want this to be like recruiting out of high school. I know what it is, and this is a business decision at this point now. So I actually went to Georgia, and we talked just ball for about 3 hours. And they showed me, hey, this is how we envision using you in the offense, where you fit with our team. Here's the culture, here's the expectation. And it's everything they were saying, checked off a box on my list of, hey, this is what I'm looking for in a team. They're a championship program. The expectation is to win. They did have, they had 2 tight ends leave, one that they weren't expecting. So there was, a spot there. And just everything that I wanted out of the school I was going to transfer to, just Georgia was checking off all those boxes. And ultimately it was just, I had a good feeling about it. And I had the feeling, I just kind of told my dad, I was like, hey, I think this is where it's going to be. And he's like, I think you're making the right decision. So after it's all said and done, I was more than pleased with how the way things turned out. Met some great teammates there, just some great friends, had a great experience, and loved everything about being at Georgia.
Yeah, another unique experience, something you went through that a lot of people don't go through. There was no spring practice for you. Now, a couple of years ago, Demetrius Robertson came in from Cal and didn't go through spring, and it kind of put him behind a little bit, Kirby said. He really wasn't as up to speed as all those other receivers, and yet you come in and hit the ground running. How were you able to stay in football shape without going through a spring practice, because that was after you announced you were going to transfer from Tennessee. So no spring football for you, and yet you were able to come into Georgia in fall camp and win playing time. How did you stay in shape during the spring?
Sure. So I actually trained with the same guy I trained with for Pro Day, Devin Driscoll at D1 in Knoxville. And that's how we kind of made our relationship for the training and Pro Day. But I told him what I wanted. I said, hey, I can't go through this spring, and I want it to be an edge for me and not a downside. I want to come out stronger and faster than I would have if I was going through spring ball. And he took on the challenge, and he did a great job. He kept me in physical shape. I was stronger. I was faster than I ever felt. And I hit the summer workouts at Georgia just running, like you said. So that's a testament to him. I just did the workouts he asked me to do, and I did them as hard as I could. So he was the mind behind, keeping me in shape. And, I can't thank him enough. I'll give him another shout out. I can't thank him enough because he really helped me in my final years there at Georgia, and also before Pro Day.
You say work. What does that mean when you say you got to get? Are we talking about 2 hours, 3 days a week, 2 hours, 5 days? I mean, just how much training are we talking about here?
Yeah, I would say at least 2 hours, 5 days a week. Monday through Friday, we were hitting it hard. You get the typical 2 upper body, 2 lower body, and then sprinkle in agilities. And then Wednesday is just the conditioning agilities, and just keeping you in that football shape and keeping your mind and body in tune. And he did a great job just scheduling it all for me and letting me not have to think about it, just go in and do the workouts. So he was great.
Any trepidation being the new guy or being a football guy? Had you had to plug into camps and go enough places? I mean, you walk into Georgia as a former Tennessee guy. I mean, what's the lock? I mean, if it's a movie, the music, somebody turns the stereo off and everybody stares at the guy wearing a bright orange shirt when he walks in. I'm sure it wasn't that dramatic, but what was it like trying to fit in coming into this Georgia program from Tennessee?
I definitely didn't wear Tennessee orange first day, but no, it was unbelievable the way they just took me in. I was a little unsure at first, would there be any bad blood, but none of that at all. I actually got there. I didn't know a single person on the team really. I got there. I was staying at a motel until I found out, hey, maybe get a 1-bedroom apartment or see if some teammates need an extra guy. So I wasn't in the motel for more than a week before, Jake and Charlie and Eli Gibson all said, hey, come stay with us until you find a place, dude. We got an extra room, crash with us. And that's what I did for, 2 months in the summer, and then ended up some teammates needed a guy. I moved in with them, which was John Fitz and Owen Condon and Payne Walker. So I moved in with those guys. So it was just like, right when I get there, there's all these guys saying, hey, we're willing to help any way we can. Jake, Charlie teaching me the playbook in the summer, helping out, spending extra time, and just doing anything they could to help make the acclimation process smoother. So that's, they were great through the whole thing. And then I appreciate it a lot.
So let me back up here. So here's Charlie Warner. It's his senior year. You're a senior being brought in, and he's saying, hey, come stay with me. Let me help you. Talk about Charlie Warner. We talk to Kirby all the time, talks about Charlie as a leader. I mean, what does that say about a guy? I mean, you're I don't know if you're the competition coming in or a teammate. I mean, how does that all fit together?
Yeah, just unbelievably mature and unselfish. He was looking at the team bigger than himself. So while he knew, this may affect a few reps I'm getting in games and practice, he knew that I was ultimately there to try and help the football team win games. So I think that's a testament to how mature he is and how good of a guy. Anybody that's ever met Charlie knows he's a great guy, and he'd do anything for you. And through the process, we roomed together for every game. We became really close, and he helped me through a lot of things, not just on the field but off the field. So I can't thank that guy enough, and I think he's one of those guys that you'll hold a relationship for the rest of your life, just in the 7 months that we played ball together.
Well, and then I guess I'd ask you about Jake Fromm. Now in the media, we got vanilla Jake. I mean, Jake never said the wrong thing. Jake always said the right thing. He was always conscientious. We're just now getting to see Jake relax a little bit a week before the draft. I think he's going stir crazy, doing the turkey call on TV, and I'm seeing him laugh and smile more than I ever have. You got to see all of that. How do you put into perspective the kind of leader that Jake Fromm was? He became such an icon in the front of this program. So that meant that not only did he take the praise, Eli, but he took all the bullets and he took all the heat. Just knowing Jake, what would you tell us about him?
Jake is a natural leader and one that you don't see every day. His presence when he walks around, the way he carries himself, his knowledge of the game of football, everything about him just screams, captain and CEO, everything you want in a quarterback. So he was that guy that always, when it got tough, to tell us, hey, it's gonna be all right. We're gonna get through this. And when it was going good, hey, stay humble because it's gonna be hard here soon. So he did a good job of managing the team because coaches can always say everything they want to, but sometimes it doesn't resonate until one of your brothers and teammates says it. So I think he did a great job of coaching himself and holding himself to a very high standard, and in return that allowed him to hold everybody else to a very high standard. And it made for a great quarterback and great CEO for the team.
Anybody on defense that jumped out at you early? I mean, I watched you guys come in off the practice field and these summers, and everybody's uniform is soiled and dirty, and I'm thinking, man, it looks like there was one heck of a war out there. And sometimes the film crew will show these hitting drills. Was there anybody on defense that you'd say, yeah, when that guy hit you, you knew it, or boy, that was the guy that welcomed me to Georgia, or I remember this drill? Any anecdotes about any defensive players that stand out?
Yeah, I'd say two guys. Well, the whole defense, for starters, they're unbelievable, and they had an unbelievable season for us there. I mean, worked so hard, unbelievably talented, and just bailed us out of a lot of situations. And I mean, they were awesome all year. But I would say Nolan Smith welcomed me to Georgia. There early on, we were doing a drill, and I was sliding across, and we went helmet to helmet pretty hard. And I was just like, wow, that guy, he knows how to hit. And at such a young age, sometimes that's rare. A guy just comes in and is just laying the wood like that. So he's extremely talented. And the other guy I'd say is Aziz Ojulari. He's just one of those guys. He doesn't say much when he's always in a good mood, but when you're hitting him in a football game, you're going to know it. And he's strong and talented player. And anybody that's played up against him can attest and say the same thing.
They did the virtual G-Day game yesterday. It was Notre Dame. You were in the stadium for that game. I'm not sure about your rep count or anything like that. What was your takeaway? You've been in a lot of big games at Tennessee and at Georgia. What was your takeaway from that environment?
Yeah, that environment rivaled the best games I've ever been a part of. When I think of the best games, I think of the Notre Dame game. I think of A&M at A&M when I was at Tennessee there, 8 versus 9, and then Oklahoma. They're all three right there at the top of my memory list of games. It was just the atmosphere that night. Something about it. A special night game in Athens. Between the hedges, just the red lights, everything about it is just, it's etched so clearly in my mind. And it's something that you'll never forget, be able to tell your kids about one day. Unbelievable experience.
Looked like fun. What didn't look like fun was when you got sent out to talk to the media the Tennessee week, or maybe it was the week before. I'm not sure. I can't remember, but you had to know that you were going to get a lot of questions about Tennessee. And so there you stood, representing Georgia with the G. And yet you've got all these friends and your big brother there with the power T. What was your thought process as you were getting bombarded with every potential trap question involving Tennessee-Georgia rivalry? How did you handle that? And did you mentally prepare for that?
Going in, like you said, you have to know they're coming, and it was almost a joke halfway through, just the trap questions, because as soon as you acknowledge it, you just kind of smile over the guy and who asked it, and you're like, I'm not going to answer that. So, but it was all good. Those guys over there playing, the coaching staff, I've made a lot of good friendships over there, and I didn't burn any of those bridges. So it was strictly business, that 1 week where we had to play, and obviously we ended up coming out on top, but my heart ached for those guys. Not just for that game, but through the season. I wanted them to do well because I did spend 4 years in the trenches with them, and I know that they worked their butts off over there. So it was no hatred after the game. There's a lot of guys that came up and gave me a hug, and I gave them a hug back, and it was all over after that, and we could kind of let our guards down a little bit, which felt good.
Yeah, and that's all Tennessee needed was get past you, because then they started winning all their games. I think they won the last 6 or 7 in a row. They were so worried facing you. But in all seriousness, if there's one thing that Georgia and Tennessee have in common, it's that Florida game. and it's wanting to beat the Gators. I mean, if there's, I remember covering Tennessee, and, yeah, the Alabama robbery was big, and there's a lot of older people that remember the 90s. I remember it back then, but nowadays it's the Gators. And certainly for Georgia, even though they've beaten Florida 3 times in a row, I don't think these people will get their fill till they win 30 in a row because Steve Spurrier tormented them in yesteryear. You had a really big catch in that game, and I don't know what the call was. I think it was like a 3rd and 7 or a 3rd and 9, and Florida had scored to come within a touchdown. And if Florida gets the ball back, they had all the momentum at that stage. So on 3rd down, we're all thinking, Kirby's going to run the ball, run clock, force a timeout, and put it on his defense. Instead, Jake goes to you with the game on the line. Were you the primary, the secondary? Take me through that play, because your first down catch was what sealed that win and set the Georgia fan base into hysterics.
If I remember correctly, it was we had a timeout, or we were on the sideline for something, and before the play happened, and Coach Smart kind of leaned over and he said, "Hey, are you good? You good to catch this? This is what we're calling." And we had known in practice, hey, this is typically the route that's going to come open. It's not every time, no route is, but more likely than not, this is coming to that sail 12-yard outbreaking route. And then when we lined up and saw they were in man coverage, he had a low inside leverage. I think me and Jake both just subconsciously said, well, we know where the ball is going now. So he did a great job. There's pressure in his face. Swift, I think it was Swift on the play, picked it up, and he made a good throw with pressure in his face right there. And then, I just did what I'm supposed to do and then catch the ball. And then, the offensive line gave him time. And it was truly a team effort. If you watch the play on film, everybody that needed to do their job did exactly what they're supposed to do. It's cool to hear people talk about it, but I hate that the praise goes to the person that throws and catch out. The whole offense did their job on that play to make it work. So and that put the game away. I think we got one more first down after that, and it kind of just sealed the game. It's a great feeling. It's always fun to win in SEC, especially a big game like that.
Yeah, so you were able to get that win down there in Jacksonville. Big win for Georgia, obviously. They won the East Division, 3rd straight year Georgia won the East. You ran into that LSU machine. I've got to ask you about that game. Kirby told us in the days leading up, this is the best offense he's ever seen. And Kirby, I'll say it, and I guess you would probably agree, he's not one for hyperbole. He doesn't just say things to say things. I mean, if he says it, and he coached Alabama a long time, and certainly LSU set all sorts of records. But, you guys are going in there without Cager. I think George was out in the first half. DeAndre wasn't 100% after the Georgia Tech game. I mean, just how good was that LSU team, and how different could things have been if that game had started out a little bit better? Because it looked like Georgia had some opportunities. Is it that much of a game of momentum, or was that just a team of destiny, Eli?
LSU was very good. Their offense was very talented. Everybody, and that's what everybody saw too. And then their defense was also very stellar. We played the game, and they did their game, and they didn't make very many mistakes. And the team that makes fewer mistakes will win. And then that's what happened that week. Our defense played really hard. I think the score didn't really show how well they played. We put them in some bad situations offensively. We gave up the ball and put the defense in some tough situations. But they played very hard, and I think they limited their offense more than what the scoreboard showed. At the end of the day, LSU, I can't say anything bad about them. They played well all season, and they just kind of dominated. It just was one of those days that the game didn't go our way, and I think we're incredibly talented as well. So it wasn't, I think out of 10 times, how many times did we win? I'm not sure, but that day it was just they made fewer mistakes.
Yeah, so everybody's ready to write George off. I mean, the party's over. You got 2 losses now. You're going back to the Sugar Bowl. You weren't there last year, but the year before, Georgia went down there dispirited after an SEC championship game loss and lost to Texas. Things seemed kind of tense around campus. Kirby was kind of buttoned up, and word gets out that a few starters aren't going to be there. And so now not only is this a consolation prize of a Sugar Bowl, but Georgia's going to be missing all these starters. And yet you guys go down there and absolutely dominate a really good Baylor football team, a number 7 team in the country in the Sugar Bowl. It's 19-0 at the half. Eli, what happened? between that LSU loss and that Sugar Bowl win, where Georgia was able to resurrect and rise like a phoenix, and now everybody's pointing to next year because there were so many young guys that stepped up and killed it in the Sugar Bowl.
Yeah, you just said it. A ton of guys stepped up and did their job. I think when we talk about consolation prize, we're still talking about the Sugar Bowl. So while at Georgia the expectation is national championship, you can't overlook the fact that you're playing in a Sugar Bowl. And I surely didn't take it for granted, especially coming from a program where bowl games weren't as easy to always come by. And I think the guys on the team appreciated it too. They understood, hey, this isn't as easy as people make it out to be to get this far. And every backup and guy that had to rise to the occasion for that game did so. And they practiced so hard that in the weeks leading up to it. I think it showed on the field. I mean, not having starters obviously hurts every team, but those guys behind them did an unbelievable job of proving that they belong where they were at. And eventually just everything came together, and Coach Smart made a big emphasis on, hey, what happened last year is not going to happen again. And we're coming away with a win. So it was a tribute to everybody that the way we practice harder than I probably ever have for a bowl game. So I thought the way the game went just kind of showed, hey, hard work translates to the field.
Now you didn't have any highlights of jumping 10 feet over the goalpost and catching the ball, or any big third down catches like you did Florida, Eli. But I watched you mash some guys in the open field, some open field blocks, and that's something that Kirby always talks about. And I got to think, when you're a receiver, and again, I don't have the football mentality you do, but you want the ball in your hands, and yet you approach the blocking in that game, like the guy across from you had committed a crime against your family or something. How did you get into that mentality to turn into such a open field masher from this former high school receiver? And your last game, you're out there knocking people down in the open field.
Yeah, it's just being competitive. And I know me and Charlie talked about, we worked that perimeter blocking a lot in practice. That was something we put a big emphasis on. And but me and Charlie and all the tight ends, we knew our role on the team, and it wasn't going to be to catch 60, 70 balls a season. Our role was going to be very much getting the ball to the all DeAndre Swifts, the George Pickens, and we were okay with that. We're like, hey, if it means that we're going to win games, and if we mash these guys in the perimeter, let's do that. And that's what we did. So I think we probably didn't admit it to each other, but by the end of the year, we started to love it. We started to love blocking on the perimeter and getting our hands on people, and it's kind of how we bonded, was just, hey, it's not always going to be pretty with what we have to do, but we're going to get it done, and we're going to do whatever we can to make sure that this team is as successful as possible. So yeah, the role wasn't what you'd think, but it was fun.
Yeah, by the end of the year, you really, all the elements, and I guess in the NFL, that's the business, right? Even for a receiver, how many times are you going to block versus how many times are you going to catch? One guy you mentioned, I got to ask you about it, is George Pickens. Every time I bring up George Pickens' name, it seems like somebody's got a story or a moment or a thought. You're not sure what to say about. The guy on the field is doing some unprecedented things. I don't think I've covered some great receivers, that. But this guy's making some catches, Eli, and I'm just going, where did that arm come from? Or do you have an anecdote or a thought, or was there a George Pickens moment for you when you realized, okay, this guy is really a freak?
So I wasn't as up to date on Georgia recruiting as I probably would have been if I had, been there previously. So I just get into Georgia and I'm learning all this new stuff. So I don't really know what guys are coming in as freshmen. And I remember we were throwing one day in the summer, and he jumps up and, over somebody grabs it with one hand. And I just looked over at Charlie. I said, who is that? He's like, oh, that's George Pickens. And I was like, oh, is he going to be pretty good? And he's like, yeah, he's going to be pretty good. And whenever he makes big plays, I just think back to that moment. I'm like, it's been 2 days in, and I'm already saying this guy's going to be, a stud. So he came in and made an impact early. And I think, young guys coming in, that's where you really got to shine somehow and show, hey, separate yourself from the others. And George has done an outstanding job of doing that.
Yeah, he's fun to watch for sure. Never know what's next with George Pickens. So you talk about separating yourself, Eli. We've all had a break. This coronavirus pandemic, it's an unprecedented, unfortunate, difficult time in our history as a society. How how does an athlete like yourself, someone that works out so much, someone that's always on the go, how are you dealing with your time? What are you doing to stay active? Obviously, I know you're staying in shape. I know what hard work you are, but what about when you're not working out? Then what is a guy like Eli Wolf doing to pass the time during the pandemic?
There's not much to do, but lately it's been fielding a lot of calls. It's new for everybody. Scouts and coaches, they got to find ways to get information on guys before this draft. So I would say, 3 to 4 a day, just fielding calls. Sometimes it's FaceTimes talking football. Sometimes it's scouts with just general information. So they think that sometimes like, hey, I'll let you go. I'm like, hey, you don't need to let me go because this is about as highlighting as the day gets is sitting here talking ball with people that really know it. So, between that and I'm an outdoorsy guy, we went fishing and just trying to pass the time while, staying social distance. And let's hope it doesn't last much longer. I want to get out back on the field with some teammates but as long as everybody's staying safe, we've been getting our workouts in, and it's awesome having a brother to do everything with and not having to do it alone. So I've been very fortunate through it.
Looking at the question here. So this is Graham Nicholson wants to know, Eli, did you ever consider Georgia coming out of high school?
So I didn't have much tie to Georgia. At the time I was, I have very minimal scholarship offers, just MAC level or FCS. And the reason I ultimately chose Tennessee was because my brother had been there and I had built a relationship with the coaches through coming down to games and just seeing the atmosphere. And I kind of talked to him a little bit beforehand. Hey, do you think I can make it at the SEC level? He's like, I know you'll work hard, so I know you'll have a shot to make it. And that's ultimately what led me there. Had I had a connection to Georgia and investigated, maybe, but I really didn't have any connection there that would have ever led me to make that trip.
So okay. So we talked about being a walker. What would have been the reaction if you opened a scholarship offer from Georgia? I mean, because you mentioned you had like max schools. If the Georgia letter came, would you have Ethan? Is this for you? What would your reaction have been? You were 205 pounds.
Yeah, I would have said that they made a mistake somehow. And I don't know if the strictly special teams guys are supposed to be getting scholarship offers anymore, but no. So that would have been unbelievable. But I get it coming out of high school. You're a 205-pound wide receiver, not quite fast enough, not quite big enough. And I was a tweener, and I wasn't mad that offers didn't come. I accepted, hey, I'm just kind of in the middle right now. Nobody knows what to do with me. So I'll go I'll etch a role for myself. And there's no bad blood there.
What's the mentality with the draft approaching? I was disappointed. I was kind of surprised that you didn't get a combine invite. You did go to the East-West Shrine game though and played really well. And not many guys got invites to the All-Star game. So that was obviously a tribute to what you were able to accomplish. The NFL teams did recognize what you did at Georgia. Is it kind of a, man, I hope I get drafted, or geez, I really don't care, or I just want to get this process over with and get into camp regardless of the circumstance? How do you approach this weekend?
Yeah, I just want an opportunity. If a team drafts me and that's awesome. That'd be an awesome achievement. That's a dream come true. But if it is through free agency, whatever team, I guess that would be me deciding to go there, or me and my agent deciding to go there. I'm going to work my tail off to make a role for myself. And some guys, this is going to be new for, but I've already been here. That's the benefit of kind of being a walk-on before, is that through free agency, it's just doing it again. So it's not uncharted territory for me. And I think that's where it can almost be an edge for me, because I've been there before. I'm not saying other guys haven't, but it's kind of restarting the process over again. So I've got a little more insight on ways to stand out and what I need to do, and how some days aren't going to go the way you want to. And I think that can all be an edge for a guy like me.
Absolutely. You've had to prove yourself over and over again, whether it was going from walk-on to scholarship, whether it was overcoming an injury at Tennessee, whether it was transferring from one school to another, learning a new role in a new program, coming up big in the big games, playing an unselfish role in the Sugar Bowl for your teammates, and now having to do your own workout tape instead of getting a chance to go to the combine. You've been to you pretty much checked all the boxes for college athlete. Now, before I let you go, I kind of want to get, and again, I know you don't speak for everyone, and you and Ethan are always so careful to make sure you let people know that it's just your opinion, but as we face this virus, as we look to the future, what are these college football players up against right now without any spring drills, having to maybe get ready for a coming season? And do you think right now, based on what you know, like everyone else, we're all at the mercy of what we learn. Do you think that there'll be a football season? Do you have any idea or any thoughts on how they could move forward with that?
Well, as far as implementing when things return to normal, that's way out of my realm, and I just don't know enough to comment on that. But what I would tell young players right now is that this is a test of your maturity, really very early in the game. Most people, they're just now getting ready to head off to college, and they're thinking, oh, this is the first time away from home, first time not being told what to do, and now you're having to tell yourself what to do. You originally would have been going to school and having coaches holding you accountable, classes and all that. Now it's you having to do it on your own. So you're gonna have to really take that challenge seriously, because it's one that you're facing that nobody else had to. So it's really going to test their maturity. So I would say, buckle down as hard as you can, and just try and get through this time. It's tough for everybody, and just got to do your best to stay on top of things.
You mentioned you had a conversation with Kirby Smart early on before you came to Georgia. Now I guess this is kind of your exit interview. What about Kirby Smart? He's been at Georgia. This will be his 5th season coming up. He's won the last 3 SEC titles. He seems to have a unique relationship with his players. What would you tell people about Coach Smart as far as why he's successful and what he meant to your career?
Yeah, he unbelievably smart in football, and that's obvious to everybody. Just the X's and O's. But I'd say, other than the obvious of that, just the way he handles situations, he's always rising above situations, and just the way he approached me and his relationship is he just treated me very maturely, which I very much appreciated, being a grad transfer coming in, not being fresh. He just handled it. He said, hey, I need this done, get it done, and as simple as that. And that's you don't have to yell, you don't have to, and he did a very good job of knowing his players and knowing how to in return coach them. So very good at just like running an organization and knowing how to treat people. I enjoyed me and Coach Smart's relationship a lot, just on the plane rides, just very personable outside of football. Awesome experience with Coach Smart.
Well, I'll tell you, it was awesome covering this year with you. How much fun I had with that, just knowing the story of your family, knowing what you've been through at Tennessee, knowing what being at Georgia meant to you, knowing what Georgia needed from you, and just seeing the whole thing come to fruition. It was pretty awesome. You were replacing an awesome guy, and Isaac Nott, another guy that I got a ton of respect for with the Detroit Lions. You had really big shoes to fill, and you came up big when Georgia really counted on you, on and off the field. I'm sure there's a lot of Tennessee and Georgia people right now watching that are awful proud of you. So I know you're going to get back to work. I know you don't let too many compliments stick with you, but I'm really glad you did this tonight, and really glad you had the opportunity to tell your story.
Well, I appreciate all the kind words, and I appreciate it so much for having me on. We've had fun over the past year or so, interviewing, just saying hey. So I appreciate everything you've done for me and the relationship that we've built.
It's been great stuff, Eli. You have a safe week, and good luck this next weekend wherever you land. I'll probably be dialing you up again to get a couple quotes, and once you land, where you land, brother.
Awesome. Appreciate it, man. Take care.
All right. Have a good one. All right. Thanks, Eli. So that was Eli Wolf, former Tennessee and Georgia Bulldog. And Eli turned his camera off there. He's got the same problem I do. I always miss the knob there. But really enjoyed having Eli on. Very unique opportunity to bring him on here. Last week we had Michael Barnett on, Georgia Bulldog all the way through. Another guy that's really battling that I thought really improved as the year went on. Another guy like Eli that I believe will be in the camp. And I just got to say this about the Wolf family. When you're a beat guy and you talk to players, and it's always about the game, but sometimes you can see and learn a little bit more. And that family truly was special. And I appreciated the opportunity to get to cover both Ethan and Eli. Again, you see the good, the bad, and you just see how personable he is, how mature he is. Ethan's the same way. I mean, just incredible class from that family. And how about Kirby Smart? You looked at Eli's numbers, and he didn't have big numbers. In fact, he caught more passes this year than I think he did all of his career at Tennessee, all 3 or 4 years combined. So Kirby Smart's ability to recognize that talent, to put him in a system where he would have success, Eli's ability to come in, fit in with the team, You heard the story about how Jake Fromm and Charlie Warner took him in right from the get-go. That says a lot about the culture that Kirby Smart has created at Georgia. That's a championship culture and a championship program. And I know that right now, Tennessee trying to build that right now with their new coaching staff, and Coach Fulmer is the AD. So very unique opportunity for me as a beat guy to interview a player that I covered at 2 different schools. And he was just as impressive at Tennessee as he was at Georgia, maybe just more opportunities at Georgia on the field. So I hope all of you enjoyed this. I'm going to take a look here if there's any final questions before we call it a night. William Gleaton, thank you for the compliment. Graham Nicholson, I know Eli made a big impression in the short time that he was at Georgia. That was important for Georgia, that they found a guy like him. Really that ability. I don't know if you guys saw his 40 time. This is a guy that runs a sub 4.5 40. I mean, he's got a chance. I think he's got a chance to do some really special things, provided he gets right with the right NFL team. And after watching that interview, you just cannot not root for a guy like Eli Wolf. So mature, has already been through so much. And I'm rooting for his brother Ethan too. Like I said, for me as a beat guy, a great opportunity to get to know that family and those players. You don't always get to know them that well, but this was a unique opportunity, and I appreciated that. Appreciate the opportunity to come to you tonight. Ingles is my sponsor. I appreciate everything that Ingles does to bring the On the Beat program to us. I do a Friday night where it's just me. I've got the Sunday night where I've kind of had some players on. I don't know if I'll be able to continue to have players on. Once they get drafted, they kind of get in the, on their system there. They're kind of all about that city and that team. And certainly I appreciate that. So we'll come up with some maybe different guests on Sunday night. And then Tuesday, this week, Peter Burns from the SEC Network. We had Chris Doring on last Tuesday. This Tuesday, we're going to have Peter Burns on. I think Peter does an incredible job. Going to ask him a lot about what's going on with college football. We saw that Greg Sankey had some comments on Friday that he didn't say yes, there could be a season without other conferences, but Greg Sankey didn't rule that out. He said there would be some room for that discussion. I know there was some concern last week when we heard the news that the College Football Playoff Management Committee had talked to Vice President Mike Pence and said, before we have football again, we got to have students in the classroom. And I know that I kind of held my breath and said, oh my goodness, then how do you make sure that all these different states' governors are going to open their states up by then? What if there's 1 or 2 states that aren't open, that don't have class in session? Can there be college football if all the conferences or all the programs aren't represented? And I thought that Greg Sankey indicated on his Friday interview on Knoxville's WNML with Jimmy Himes and John Wilkerson, I thought he indicated that that was a possibility. He said there would be room for that in the discussion. Also, SEC Media Days, you heard me ask Eli Wolf about being there as a Tennessee rep a couple years ago. Those are scheduled for the middle of July in Atlanta. Greg Sankey says tentatively still scheduled. So very hopeful that we'll be able to go to Atlanta. If not, I'm sure we'll do something video-wise. Greg Sankey has been very specific that his mission remains football by Labor Day weekend. Now, we don't know if that's going to happen, but as Commissioner Sankey reminds us, we don't have to make any decisions right now. That's still a ways off. So no reason to stress about that at this point. We don't know what information we'll have. We know that the United States has the best doctors and scientists in the world, and they're racing to find the cures and the antibodies and the vaccine. So we'll see where we're at later this summer. I remain optimistic. I remain hopeful. You may have had a chance to read some of my stuff this week. Kind of rallying myself, provided some virtual G-Day coverage. Kirby Smart with a pretty interesting interview at halftime with Eric Zier and the Georgia football radio team. Called out Richard LeCount. It wouldn't be a Kirby press conference if he didn't lean on his best player. And I want to make sure people understand that. When Kirby is openly critical of a player, and all Kirby did was mention that Richard got beat by the tight end in the first half on a route. Everybody did that night. It seemed Cole Kmet was on fire the first half. Kirby always does that with his best players. That's what coaches do. They lean on you. And Richard LeCount is a guy that is near and dear to Kirby Smart's heart. He was a very important recruit. He plays the safety position where Kirby himself was all SEC, and he's bound and determined to make Richard LeCount the best possible safety in America. And Richard knows that. We've done those interviews with Richard, and Richard smiles and says, yeah, man, that's why I'm here. He wants that coaching. The great players want that coaching. They totally embrace those challenges. So Kirby knows what he's doing there. I was a little caught off guard when Kirby was talking about not knowing what he had at quarterback. It almost seems like he's sending a message to Jamie Newman. I don't know what the message is other than you better be ready to work, because he says that the quarterback job isn't settled yet. He says there's going to be competition with Stetson Bennett and Dwan Mathis and Carson Beck. And Kirby's usually pretty firm behind his word. So a challenge for those guys to continue to get ready, because when football's back on, there's not going to be a whole lot of time. And it's going to be a matter. You heard what Eli Wolf said about guys having to be mature, having to manage themselves. That's going to be who wins the national championship, however this next season plays out, whether it's a full season or an abbreviated season or a delayed season. It's going to be the most mature team that has the players that can manage themselves. And that's really the test of a program and of a coaching staff. So that's something that's going to make this upcoming season very unique. I'll be very interested. I think this Georgia team is very dialed in. I think these players have a lot of great leaders. Let's take a look. Any more questions, guys, before I go tonight? Gleaton pointing that out. Gary Strickland, good to see you in here as well. Always enjoy seeing all these comments from people. Kathy, no doubt about it. I'm always, I thought you were complimenting Kirby Smart. No doubt about it. Look, all these kind words. I don't know what to say. I'm so flattered by these compliments. Tuesday, 12:30, right here, we're going to have Peter Burns. I'll be interviewing him. I'm going to call it a night tonight. Thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the Eli Wolf story. I can't say enough good things about that family, and can't say enough about you all for joining me here on a Sunday night. Again, I appreciate that. It's part of why I enjoy covering this program. Been very fortunate to cover some great SEC programs at Auburn, Alabama, Tennessee, and now Georgia, and they're all wonderful in their own way. So everyone have a great Sunday night, and I'll be back on with you again on Tuesday.